Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Science of SaaS Startups podcast. Today, I'm talking to Christian Lutz. Christian is the founder and presenter of Crate. They develop CrateDB, which is purpose-built to scale applications in a machine data world. Christian, welcome.
Thanks, Ben. Happy to be here.
So just want to kick things off by asking a few questions to help the audience get to know you as a person a little bit. So first off, what do you spend too much time doing on the internet or on your phone, which just isn't productive at all?
I'm looking at possible locations where to travel and where to do some sports and next hiking tour or stuff like that. That's what I do, probably a little bit too often. It's indirectly productive, of course.
So you're a real travel fiend, are you?
I love to travel, yeah. Has been a little bit damaged in the COVID times, obviously.
Yeah.
But still managed to do that, yeah.
Have you been able to kind of do what you want to do, or you find a way to make it happen, like with kind of quarantining and things like that?
Yeah, exactly. And I had the luck that I got my shots very early in January already, and so I was well prepared, and it's also in the surrounding areas. I live in Austria. It was not a big problem also last year. No.
Okay, that's good. And you mentioned you kind of travel for sports. Like what sports do you do?
I do mountaineering a lot, and in winter ski touring and ski hiking, stuff like that. And generally speaking, everything on or below water, also if it's frozen, that's good.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so next question. If you could eliminate one thing from your daily routine that you really don't like doing, what would you eliminate and why?
Well, the requirement to do a lot of check-ins, one-to-ones and meetings is at the same time important. And at the same time, I would like to eliminate a lot of these meetings. So there's just almost no way around that. So obviously trying to meet and talk to people outside these schedules. But generally speaking, I'm in too many meetings and I work too much on my emails, I guess.
Have you kind of moved back into the office, or are people working kind of remotely still at the moment?
No, we moved back in the office a while ago, and it's basically free for everybody to come or not to come. But also during lockdown, it was legally allowed to use the office if you had no other chance. Example, team members that have little kids and one flat, you can't work there really. So we never had a complete nobody's in the office, except one time when we had an infection risk. Fortunately, nobody got infected, but we were contact persons, and so we had to close the office for 2 weeks. But other than that, it was always open, and I enjoy it also. I enjoy it probably more than before.
Yeah, so it's not a case you've just been locked in kind of endless one-to-one Zoom meetings then?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
Obviously in the hard lockdown, this was a lot of the daily routine, these endless Zoom meetings, but it eased up a lot. And also our customers. So I had like the first in-person customer meeting started already in April, I would say again. So that was pretty early with all the protection and show your test and keep the mask on and everything. But depending on the companies, they just played it how we have to play it. It's here and we have to live with it, yeah? And be protected.
And have you seen much of an adjustment, over the last 18 months in terms of more remote selling, or is it kind of pretty much back to kind of before COVID in terms of being face-to-face during the sales cycle with your customers?
No, it's way not back to that. So the majority of the meetings is clearly remotely. And that has also the advantages because usually as a smaller company, startup, when you meet one of these big companies, they expect you to come. And this has totally changed now. It's completely normal to do even these first important meetings remotely now. And we find it hard. So for us, it has not been like easy. It was very hard to do remote selling, and last year wasn't easy at all. This year, I think we go to our usual doubling the previous year number again. But it remains a challenge. And more important, these meetups, events, trade shows, and all these things where we used to get a lot of leads, qualified and really proper, serious leads, that dried out because these online versions of these events, they are a joke, essentially. So you have to do it on your own.
Yeah, it's one of those things where obviously all technology companies have had to kind of adapt in the way in which they sell, and certain solutions are a lot more suitable for that type of remote sell.
Yeah.
And other ones you kind of need that kind of longer or more time and that face-to-face engagement. So how have you replaced like those kind of the leads which you were getting through events?
I mean, we did not manage to fully replace that, to be honest. So it was less leads. And we worked very hard with our network. We really pressed the lemon on this one. So meaning existing customers, our VCs, investors, board members, people in the industry we know, obviously LinkedIn work, but everybody's doing this on LinkedIn now. So I'm experiencing that myself, being, you get waves of these requests. You can't even read them all. And so in addition to that, doing our own webinars and our own, let's say, online company events where we invite people, or we had speakers we would invite and talk about a certain topic and attract people that look to that. So plus online advertising activities and social media activities and the normal things that you have to do anyhow. And I think we went through a valley, and now I think we're on a good track again.
Yeah. Okay. So if we just jump into talking about Crate as a business and a technology, do you just want to kick things off and give us an overview of the company and what you're trying to do?
Yeah, well, so Crate.io is our company, and we have CrateDB as a product. That's a data management platform in the cloud, but also on the edge, a database essentially that is specifically and purpose-built for use cases in all kinds of digitalization projects. And predominantly this has to do with automated data that's generated, machine data, like sensor data, security data, retail transaction data, logistics data, stuff like that is generated in huge volumes and without human interaction. Essentially, it's automated data to make it easy to collect this data at very large volumes, write that data fast, and also read that data fast. And so allowing use cases where companies would do real-time analytics on very large data sets with regards to their production lines. For example, one of our customers produces in consumer packaged goods 160,000 products per hour in one line, but they have dozen plus lines. And each of these products has a set of data, and this has to be monitored, watched to see how the tolerances are developing. Is it going out of tolerance or not? But also in hindsight, the raw data for the analytics, plus data scientists that do AI and machine learning on top of that data. And so we are this data hub that you can use very easy. And the special thing that we have is that all the characteristics of such a machine database for sensor data and all of that, usually they don't have a SQL interface. And SQL is the lingua franca of the database world. Everybody knows that and can program with that. And we combine these technologies. That's our special thing. So we have a standard SQL interface, but it basically you have all the advantages of the so-called NoSQL world as well.
I've seen you talk about it as new SQL rather than like NoSQL, because you're kind of combining the best of both worlds. Like, just for anybody who isn't aware, like where does SQL kind of fall down when it comes to this machine data world, and where does the kind of new SQL approach kind of really leverage those benefits?
Good question. So let's say in the old world, a SQL database like SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL, what everybody's using, and these databases are usually built for one server. So whatever you fit on one server, you're good. That you have a lot of these functionalities by now, and you can also store sensor data there. It's no problem. And our approach to that is, and that's the difficult part, if you want to run this in a distributed, very large environment. So our largest customer runs 500 database server, and this is very large. The typical customer runs between 5 and 20 maybe. And this means it's a very scalable, very powerful, very fast system. But you as a developer, you don't have to worry about how do I share the data among the servers? How do I make sure it doesn't get lost? For you, it just feels still like a single node SQL server, like you knew from all your experiences. But in the back end, you have a very powerful scaling engine that you can build out infinitely if you want. And this is really what we add to it. And also, of course, there are specific functionalities when you do time series data, where you have to deal, where you expand the SQL capacity, let's say, to deal with these time series data types.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned earlier a little bit around the kind of flexibility that the Crate offers. So it would be available to be used on-premise, in edge computing, also in the cloud. Is that just about being responsive to kind of client requirements, or is that about kind of opening up to a range of different use cases?
So when we started, which is now today actually exactly 8 years ago, by the way. So and when we started, yeah, thanks. So when we started, we only had on-prem in mind and the edge in mind, if you want. So this is what we build. We build a database that you download and then you run it on your own, or of course you can deploy it to the cloud and run it there on your own. Over time, we realized, and this is what the whole industry realized for database companies, if you look, the successful database companies are all open source. And the traditional monetization concept of selling a database subscription or a license to a company, this evaporated. It's no longer happening. Exceptions apply, of course. We also have subscription customers when they need a service on-prem and 24/7 hotline and all of that. But that's the exception. 90+% of the business is happening in the cloud, and we provide database as a service. So we turned into a SaaS company, essentially, not a consumer SaaS company, but we provide the database as a service to our customers. And the big design goal and also our product vision, and this developed over time. And now, however, it is that the very same functionality that we offer in the cloud, the very same binary, exactly the same features you get on the edge version, Plus, you get synchronization capabilities. So you can decide what data do you want to keep on the edge and maybe throw away, and what tables and what part of the tables where you store the data you want to automatically sync to the cloud. And this makes it very convenient for developers to build an application that accesses the cloud database, but also the edge database with it's exactly the same. And we think that edge is going to be growing in importance. And it's not an or question, it's a totally and question, because you always have aggregations that you do in the cloud where you also need more compute and power and storage. But also at the same time, you can buy an Intel NUC PC for $100, which when you combine 3 of them with $80 1 terabyte disk, you have a very powerful, highly available cluster, a little box like that, like a couple of cigarette boxes that you can deploy next to a machine for very little money and do very powerful analytics on the spot there. And if one of these things break, you just put another one there. The database and our software will make sure you don't lose the data. So it's, I think it's going to be very exciting how this develops. And it's not, as I said, an or question. Edge will grow in importance, and even more so the cloud.
Yeah. Okay. And obviously, in terms of target markets, you're very active in kind of industrial settings, IoT and sensors, machine sensors that you mentioned earlier. I mean, is this a solution for any type of company, or do you see a sweet spot in those kind of manufacturing areas?
Absolutely not focused on a particular industry from a technical point of view. So you can use this scalable database for just any purpose. And we know from our open source users, they do that also. So for example, one of the leading golf platforms in the US, Golf Now from NBC, runs on Crate, and they store golfing data there. And when people walk around on the lawn, the reason why we in our communication focus a lot on industrial IoT is that these guys already face the pure scaling challenge, and are also prepared to shell out money for that. And so that's essentially a go-to-market strategy. But equally important to us is security, or we have customers in logistics. We have customers in retail. So it's spread, but it's a heavyweight of our paying customers is actually in industrial IoT, yes.
Yeah, okay. So if we switch to talking about the kind of startup life a little bit. So as a company, you've raised a little over $27 million so far in funding. And prior to starting Crate, you ran several very different types of businesses. Could you just tell us a little bit about those experiences and the challenges you faced there, which led to the thought process of coming up with Crate?
Sure. So Crate is my 4th venture-backed company now. And I studied mechanical engineering, industrial engineering in Vienna, Austria, but never practiced it then because part of my thesis was already a software product. And this is how I came into software. And in the previous companies, with one exception, which I come to, I immediately had to do with very large data backends. So my first company was uboat.com and sms.at. These were SMS portals when the internet boom happened. And we grew to 7 million users very quickly. And we had a huge challenge with databases. This was the biggest nightmare and very, very expensive and very complicated. And then after that, when we sold that, we did something similar in the gaming industry. What we did for mobile telcos, we basically provided a content platform for gaming companies and a trading platform. So this was the time of 2006 when the these freemium gaming models emerged. You know, you can play for free, but you need to buy a bigger gun, a bigger motor, a bigger shield, a blue tiger, whatever.
Endless.
So and so we provided an OEM platform, a SaaS platform, so game developers could focus on their game and just use us as their inventory management and trading platform to provide in-game currency and stuff like that. And here also the database was the bottleneck. And then after that, the only thing which did not have to do anything with that was the Impossible project when we bought Polaroid factory, the last Polaroid factory when it went bankrupt, and restarted the production of that again, because with some friends who were really Polaroid fans, and I did this for like 5 years. And just when we sold this business also, a friend approached me who was the CTO of a company called StudiVC. This was the largest social network in Europe before Facebook rolled over it. So this was 21 million users, something like that. And his main problem was the database again. And so he came up together with a couple of founding engineers that we have, and we're still in the company, with this concept of a new type of database that would scale very easy and would be just easy to deploy, easy to run, and at the same time still keep SQL as an interface. This was really the vision and the idea that they had. I was joining from the business side at that point. I wasn't too much into the detail of a database technology. And I initially just wanted to help them to raise seed funding when I realized, wow, this is exactly the problem I had. And also the cost that was involved with that. So this is how we came up with the idea of Crate. And I just had, for the recent fundraise we did, the VC asked me, hey, can you pull up your initial deck of the first presentation you made? I just would like to see, you know, how you changed and evolved. And the fun part is this very promise is still, this was there, is still there. And also IoT was already on that slide. So the thing is, building a database is a very, very long and difficult undertaking. I have totally underestimated it, like everybody, including our VCs. It really takes time. It's a difficult task.
And when you're kind of growing a business, growing a startup, and you're moving into kind of new geographies, like specifically as a European company, you know, moving into the US market, can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges, you know, whether they be cultural or organizational that you face, and you know, how you overcome those?
Yeah, so we started to sell in the US starting 2017, 18, by essentially just going there and meeting people in Silicon Valley style in San Francisco, meetups, and talking our way through and starting doing our own events there. And the huge challenge there for us was this time zone disconnect to the engineering team, and basically how to manage that. But also hiring was a huge challenge for us then. And we focused on a few large companies and clients, and building out the open source usage, obviously. And when COVID hit, beginning of 20, our US business essentially stalled, I have to say. So we basically acknowledged that and focused on Europe. And basically, with our next funding round, the B round, we will only fully restart our US operation.
Yeah.
And I think that we flipped the company to the US. So technically we're also a US company. We have a US board and everything. But the heart of the operation is in Berlin and in Austria, where the most people are also. And the next step is going to be to build up again a proper US operation. But this time we will put it to the East Coast and not to the West Coast.
So what do you think are the kind of the big learnings that you took from that first time? You mentioned the kind of challenges with the with the time zone difference in the engineering team. Is that partly moving from one coast to the other? Because obviously West Coast is fairly challenging in terms of the days overlapping.
Yeah. I mean, this was a big learning that it's just not sustainable for the team here, but also for the guys in the West Coast. It's really difficult. You can do it for a period of time, but not as the operation. And the other big learning was that we basically hired people in different places in the US, as we do in Europe as well, of course. But somehow the loyalty and the connection to the company, I found it to be very difficult to establish this with these US remote people. So they are, in our experience, they are way easier to switch a company. They're way easier to move around, etc. And it's different than in Europe, where if you like your job and the pay is fair, and company is doing something exciting, people usually stay and help build together a big thing, and they have fun together. And this was difficult with this little team, and that was even remote. So the big learning here was, for the next time, we really want to build a proper company, a team that works together and has a nucleus that also physically exists and sits together. And then you can add remote people to that and help them to learn the culture and everything. So with this regard, this was a big learning.
Yeah, no, I think that's quite interesting, actually. I'd say definitely in terms of Europe, from our experience, you see people a lot more mindful of what their CV looks like in terms of, I've had 4 years here, I've had 3 years there. If they're 6 months, they don't want to kind of jump into the next one. Whereas in America, I think they're a lot more jumping from opportunity to opportunity, which, which obviously throws its own challenges up. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. I'm obviously, mindful of your time and everything. In terms of if people want to get in touch and discuss Crate, where do you live? Are you on email or LinkedIn or just through the website? What's the best way for people to get in touch?
Yeah, LinkedIn, obviously, but also email, Christian@Crate.io is a good way to do that. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I really appreciate your time, Christian, and look forward to seeing how the company can grow with that next stage of funding.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for the time.